What they would say is they wanted us to lead because they don't want to follow Russia. They don't want to follow China. They do see us as the moral authority there. And, it's a perfect example is when Trump finally, when Syria crossed the red line and did chemical weapons, and Trump did the first shots back and did the missiles, the number of ambassadors that came to me and said, it's so good to see the United States lead again.
So what was it like going into the UN? Because I think you just described it perfectly. I mean, it seems like the most backwards, at least the Security Council stuff. I know they do I suppose they do some good humanitarian stuff. Maybe you can comment. I don't know. All right, well, you can comment on that, obviously. But like to just go in there and try to at least defend freedom, try to get some of these insane votes that they're constantly doing reversed and change some of that stuff. Like, I'm guessing you were walking down the hallway, people were not like, oh, yay, there's Nikki Haley.
I mean, the UN is not for the faint at heart. I mean, every day it felt like I was putting on body armor, and you knew we'd have a fight. You just didn't know which country we were fighting that day. But how blessed was I to defend the country I love so much? And I was not going to let them criticize us about anything. I purposely went in not knowing the do's and don'ts of the UN because I wanted to kind of be able to ask for forgiveness and really go in with fresh eyes. But I also knew I wanted to be very black and white. I wanted to make sure they knew what the United States was for and what we were against, and there was no gray area. I didn't care if they liked me, but I wanted them to respect America, and I wanted them to know where we stood. Obama had really created this scenario where they didn't know what we were for. And he tried to appease everybody by criticizing the U.S., and he would just throw foreign aid out to everyone to buy friends. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to make sure that we really put our line down in the sand of this is where we are. If you want to join us, we will partner with you. And if you don't, we're going to call you out for it. And so that's why I said we were taking names at the UN. They thought that was like unbelievable that I would say something so undiplomatic.
Yeah.
But the point was, if you go around saying death to America, we're going to take down names. But if you're our friend and ally, we're going to have your back and take down names and protect you too. And so, look, it was a great experience. It's challenging to deal with the Chinese and to have the Russians always trying to stir the pot and to have everybody talk negatively about America. But I wasn't going to stand for it. I wouldn't take 1 second of it because I know how great we are. And I knew what they were telling me in the corridors of how great we were.
Yeah, so that's actually exactly what I wanted to ask you. So like, I would imagine that the countries secretly believe that, most of the countries. Like they secretly must be like, yeah, if the US doesn't exist in freedom, then we're all kind of screwed. But then they rarely vote that way, or publicly they say all these ridiculous things.
No, they bash us publicly, but what they would say is they wanted us to lead because they don't want to follow Russia. They don't want to follow China. They do see us as the moral authority there. And, it's a perfect example is when Trump finally, when Syria crossed the red line and did chemical weapons, and Trump did the first shots back and did the missiles, the number of ambassadors that came to me and said, it's so good to see the United States lead again. Like that's what they want. They want us to call out evil. They want us to do good. They want us to show something. And that's why I've always said the United States leadership isn't going to war. Sometimes just when the United States says something, countries follow. When we mention this is what should happen, they do tend to move with us. And so there's good that we have there, but we have to continue to use that voice and be a force for good.
Can you explain either your philosophy or Trump's philosophy or both of your philosophies just generally on when you should use the military? Because I think a lot of people think somehow if you're for the military, that means you're for war.
And that's not the case at all.
It's actually the reverse, yeah.
I mean, the key is, look, I'm in a military family. So the last thing I'm going to say is with my brother was full-time military, my husband is, the last thing you want is your family members to go to war. But the military is there for a reason. And what you do want is, for example, with Biden wanting to pull out of Afghanistan, well, my husband served in Afghanistan. I know what was happening there. We don't need thousands of troops there, but you do need some there for intel purposes. That's really what you want, is military for intelligence, to tell you on the ground in Syria whether they're getting ready to do a chemical weapons attack, to tell you on the ground in Afghanistan whether there's another plot for 9/11. So the only thing I'll say is that Biden's foreign policy is really backwards in the way that, look at how much has changed from the Chinese delegation comes to Alaska and humiliates our American delegation. You know, Putin's challenging Biden to a debate. How ridiculous is that? Kim is starting to test off ballistic missiles again, and here Biden's falling all over himself to do business with Iran, but is boycotting Georgia? You know, like these things, and then all
Georgia
through
the
that,
state, not Georgia the country.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and all these things, and he's cutting our defense spending. You know, and I'll be the first one to say the military's bloated, it's bureaucratic, there's a lot that we shouldn't be paying for, but if we don't modernize our military, China and Russia are already moving. Iran is already speeding up. We look so distracted right now. And making sure we modernize our military, making sure we have strategic military on the ground in certain places to keep us safe and to keep bad actors from doing more harm, that's an important thing.
So what do you think is behind Biden and the decisions he's making? This is the question that everyone gets asked all the time, like, because I think most people don't really believe it's Biden leading this thing anymore, that it's either the Obama machine behind it or something that's left of the Clinton machine or something else altogether. Like, to me, it seems like if you would have asked Joe Biden 10 years ago if he agreed or disagreed with some of the things you just said there, he probably would have agreed, where now it's like, who knows what he believes?
What it feels like to me, coming, you know, in the transition from Obama to the Trump administration and foreign policy and now where it's going, it really does feel like Obama 2.0. I mean, the idea that they're already trying to make friends with Iran, that was very much something Obama would do. You know, the idea that they're like starting to, you know, pick fights with Russia in a strongman sense, but not in real result sense. That's something Obama would do. You know, the Paris Climate Agreement, the Human Rights Council, all these things, these Trump reversals are very much Obama stances. And so I think that that's the approach Biden's taking. He surrounded himself by Obama people, whether it's, you know, Secretary Blinken or Jake Sullivan or any of those are all Obama people that would be advising him on what Obama wants.
So what can be done at the international level, like with the UN at this point? Like, if you were there right now, which probably ain't gonna happen, but if you were there right now, I mean, this just in the last couple of days, Iran got put on the was it the Women's Rights Council or something? They're
Women's
leading
Council. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
But like, are these
And it
people
wasn't
laughing?
just Iran,
I mean,
it was also China. Like,
Right,
this
but-
is like an absurd.
But who makes these decisions? Like, there's someone goes into a meeting and they're like, yes, let's put Iran on the Women's Rights Council. Like, how does that even happen?
It's why the United Nations doesn't have credibility. It's why they struggle. First of all, if I was at the United Nations right now, I would immediately call a Security Council hearing and hold China accountable for what they did to the world with COVID. I would ask what the World Health Organization knew. I would call out Iran for all of the violations of UN resolutions that they're doing and say, how can you turn around and get into an Iran deal when they're violating multiple resolutions? You know, there's a lot of things that could be done and should be done, and instead what we've seen is the UN ambassador went and basically criticized America for being racist.
Was there any speech that you had heard in the last couple of years that was more awful than that?
Mortified that here I was defending America, and here the Chinese delegation goes and humiliates the American delegation, and the UN ambassador basically gave them all the fuel to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you don't go in, we are not a racist country. We are the least racist country. And so the idea that they would say that is, it's such a, I can't even understand what Biden or the ambassador think that will do to help America. That's apologizing for America.
I don't think they want to help America at this point. That's what I mean about Biden. I don't know what Biden believes, but I think the machine that's under him or behind him or whatever it is, like, do they want to help America?
It made me sad. I mean, you talked about what can the UN do? What is it good for? The reason presidents struggle with staying in the UN is not because of any great actions by the UN. We see that all the time. I think the reason they stay is because of the veto. There are only 5 countries that have a veto on the Security Council in the UN: Russia, China, US, UK, who am I missing? France. So if you look at those, if bad things happen, if Russia and China try and get together and do something bad, the US can stop it. That's the reason that we're on the Security Council is we can stop bad things from happening. But they waste more than they should ever. I cut $3 billion the first year off of that budget. And that was just low-hanging fruit.
And the lights didn't go out. The building still existed.
And people see that big building and they think they're ambassadors in there. That's all staff.
Yeah.
They've got elevator operators in there. I would say, do you know how many vaccines you could give kids with what you're paying these elevator operators? They doubled their staff in the last 10 years.
And wasn't there some massive scandal where they were like racking up something like $100 million worth of parking tickets in New York City?
No,
like it's just crazy over there.
It's so ridiculous. And
Yeah.
China is infiltrating the entire UN. They are trying to really, I think they now control 4 different agencies within the UN. Russia controls the cyber agency, believe it or not. China almost started controlling the intellectual property, and we were able to stop that from happening. But I mean, it's just the UN will not be relevant until they start talking about the things that are uncomfortable to talk about. The Uyghur genocide that's happening in China. You know, the fact
But
that
they won't even have a meeting about it.
they won't even do it.
Yeah.
If you're looking for more honest and thoughtful conversations about politics instead of nonstop yelling, check out our politics playlist. And if you want to watch full interviews on a variety of topics, watch our full episode playlist all right over here. And to get notified of all future videos, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.